Hello everybody, Wannabe Reviewer here, and welcome back to the Wannabe Podcast, episode 44. Now before we get this week's podcast, I just want to say that last week, I talked about the whole Spider-Man MCU debacle, where apparently, Sony took their custody of Spider-Man completely away from Disney, and so there's this whole thing going on where, if you remember, what I was worried about was whether or not we're going to get another Marvel's Spider-Man PlayStation game. I guess what I'm trying to say, I know all of you were just as worried as I was. I know all of you were freaking out because, you're wondering whether you'll get to play another awesome video game. And I'm proud to say that I think the Spider-Man video game series is safe. All right. Like I said, you can all calm down now. But yeah, I've been looking into it. It seems that the Spider-Man video game side of things isn't affected by that deal. In fact, recently, I want to say it was sometime earlier this week, they actually released a Marvel Spider-Man, I don't know if it was called Game of the Year edition, something like that, where I guess it has all the DLC, all that good stuff, on one disc. So yeah, in fact, the series, so far it seems to be doing good. So like I said, for all of you who are freaking out, it looks like our video games are safe, folks. So you're welcome. I know you were all waiting for that news story. You're welcome. But that aside, though, I don't know. I just feel like throwing that in there because literally I was reading about it right before I started the podcast. But that aside, though, let's get started with my week, I guess. And transferring over to my week, the first thing that I did this week, I don't know why I got so involved in this, but I really dove into using Hulu this week. All right. I don't even know what made me want to try it, but for whatever reason, I was just on the Nintendo eShop. I was looking at what you could get for free on there or really cheap. And I noticed that, Hulu's on there. And I know Hulu has been on the Switch for a year at this point, maybe more. And for whatever reason, I'm I've never tried out Hulu. I know a couple of friends that have it. I'm going to use a free trial thing and I'm going to see what's on there. And man, I don't want to sound like a total shill or anything, but damn, Hulu is actually pretty cool. It's not even an anime service, for instance. And I think there's better anime on Hulu than on something like Crunchyroll. There's series that I've never really seen anywhere or that are really hard to find. Let's say, I know Princess Tutu was on there. I know that there's this show called Watamote, the one about that girl with the bag under her eyes. That it's super awkward. She's just always running into situations that make her look bad. That's on there. Basically everything that is on Crunchyroll, at least the really popular series, they're on Hulu. Man, I'm just trying to think, but there's so many series on Hulu that, yeah, I've never seen anywhere else. So I was impressed. And then when it comes to TV shows and movies and stuff, I'll admit I didn't look too far into the movies. But when it comes to TV shows, for instance, they have It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. They have the whole Malcolm in the Middle series. They have a bunch of animated adult series, Bob's Burgers, Futurama, the Boondocks, a bunch of stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, don't want to sound like a shill, but I'll admit I was really impressed. And so a big part of my week this week was just looking at all the stuff I could on Hulu. Because yeah, I was just really impressed. Didn't expect it to just have that much stuff to it. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to really sit down and think about what I want to stay subscribed to. Because right now I have Netflix, I have Crunchyroll. But yeah, I'm honestly starting to wonder if I should just let those two go, make the switch to Hulu, and anything that's not on that service, I can just find online, just download it, stream it somewhere else, because I don't know, like I said, I was just really impressed. So yeah, I would say if you haven't tried out Hulu, give the free trial a try. It's actually, I thought it was worth it. So yeah, there we go. Moving on, when it comes to movies, it had been quite a while since I went to the theater and just really watched movies that weren't just a popular thing that a family member or a friend wanted to see. But yeah, this last Saturday, I went to the theater and I just sat there and just watched stuff that, just kind of smaller scale stuff. And so I'm not going to talk about all the movies that I watched, but since I am about to do a review of this particular movie, hopefully soon, I thought I would at least talk about this one. And one of the 3 movies that I saw this horror movie called Ready or Not. And Ready or Not, I had seen the trailer for it, and it seemed interesting. But I gotta admit, I still kind of went in kind of skeptical, you know, because sometimes you see a trailer, and the trailer feels like it ends up having nothing to do with the movie. But sure enough, went in, saw Ready or Not, and like I said, it was actually very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. For anyone who hasn't ever heard about the movie, Ready or Not is basically about this young woman named Grace. And, you know, she just married the love of her life. His name is Alex, like Ladomas or something like that. He belongs to this wealthy family that made their money basically off of like board games and like cards and stuff. They made their empire off of that. And so, you know, she's married into a wealthy family, and it's kind of awkward because even though she really loves Alex and she really wants to be with him, there are kind of some issues with, you know, he's kind of estranged from his family. This is like the first time he's seen them in years, and the family doesn't really like her too much. You know, they're kind of cold towards her. And so when the movie starts, you know, they just got married. She's kind of dealing with all that. And on the night of their, you know, wedding, Alex tells her that if she wants to be a part of the family, like if she wants to be properly initiated, then she has to follow like a little family tradition. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, at midnight, you know, you have to come meet the family, you know, all that good stuff. Follow us to our like gaming room or whatever. And you have to play a game with us. And like, don't worry, if you play this game with the family, they'll totally like accept you or whatever. And, you know, since she wants to like, you know, get along with his family, and, you know, she knows that it's kind of awkward with them, she says, okay, sure. And she, you know, agrees, and she heads down there at midnight. And, you know, when she gets down there, I don't want to spoil it, but there is some really cool lore about Alex's, like, great-great-grandfather and how he started the business up. And this, like, deal he made with, like, a mysterious benefactor that helped, like, fund his company or whatever. And basically, that's where the tradition started, that anytime they accept somebody new into their family, they give them, like, this mysterious box. And they pull a card out of it, and whatever game is written on the card, that's what they play, you know, as a family at midnight. And, you know, so sure enough, Grace thinks it's kind of silly, but, you know, like I said, she wants to, like, look good in front of the family and, you know, smooth things over. So she pulls a card out of the box, and it says hide and seek. And she thinks that sounds really silly. I mean, she thinks this whole thing is already, like, silly enough. But she's like, okay, sure, you know, whatever, I guess I'll hide, you know, ha ha ha, I guess. And so she runs off, she like climbs into like a dumbwaiter or something, and she hides. Little does she know, though, that there's this like long held belief by the family that if someone draws the hide and seek card, they, like I said, I'm not going to get too far into it, but I guess the basic idea is like there's this kind of curse where they think that they have to hunt down Grace and kill her before dawn, or else it'll be like ruin for the family. And so that's kind of what the movie's about. It's about this girl that, you know, just got married. She's trying to like get along with her in-laws or whatever. And so she agrees to play this game. And then, you know, before long, they're hunting her down, trying to kill her. And, you know, once she finds out that they're after her and that like, they mean business, it's basically about her fighting back against the family and trying to survive until dawn, you know, and or try to escape the premises or whatever. And like I said, it was actually a pretty interesting movie. I think the lore that they kind of give of like why they're playing the game, you know, why they're like this, I thought that was really interesting. I thought that like the horror aspect, I guess you can say, I thought that was pretty good. Like even though the movie isn't scary, it is still like very high tension, you know, like if you've ever played hide and seek, you know that tension of not wanting to be caught and like you're like kind of like staying out of everybody's way and you're worried about making like noise, that sort of thing. Like they definitely dial that up to 11 where Grace is like fearing for her life. And as you're watching it, it is like very edge of your seat, you know? So I thought that was really good. I thought that, surprisingly, I thought the humor was really good. Like there's a lot of dark humor in the movie. And so, yeah, I mean, lots of dark humor, really, really good movie at, you know, being like really edge of your seat. The story and like the lore was really good. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I honestly recommend it. I think that if you're looking for, something a little different. If you don't feel like watching one of like the really popular, mainstream movies right now, I think you'll have fun with this. I think it's actually a pretty fun, really bloody good time, So yeah, there you go. I recommend it. I say check it out. Moving on, besides that, besides the Hulu, because man, I've been watching a lot of Hulu, just watching a bunch of shows. And besides that weekend, where like I said, I just went and watched like a bunch of movies back to back. Besides that, the other thing that I've been doing, at least all of like today and like yesterday, I've been waiting for my copy of Astral Chain to arrive. For anyone who doesn't know, Astral Chain, it's made by a studio called Platinum. I feel like I've probably mentioned them like a few times, throughout my channel. I know that for sure. I just talked about them over on my 7 games that haven't been ported to the Switch yet. That's a little video that I just put out on Wednesday. I know I talked about them when I mentioned the Wonderful 101. But yeah, basically, Platinum Games, really cool studio. They've made stuff like the Bayonetta series. They've made stuff like Nier Automata. They've made stuff, like I said, like the Wonderful 101. A lot of the staff, they worked on stuff in the past, like Beautiful Joe, Okami, that sort of thing. So I would say they're a really good studio. I would say that their games are always really good. And so basically, that's why I'm so excited for my copy of Astral Chain to arrive, because Astral Chain's supposed to be like this really fun looking character action game where you're like a police officer sometime in like the future. There's a lot of like technology around, and you're like this police officer that I guess you're like fighting these monsters that are kind of like destroying the city, and you're teamed up with this crazy looking creature that you're both attached with like this chain, and basically you use that monster to fight the other monsters. And, it's all about doing all sorts of like sick combos and fighting and doing tricks and getting like good rankings. And it is like very anime influenced. So it has kind of like an anime aesthetic going on. And I don't know. I mean, it's stuff that I'm really into. I always really enjoy games like that. Like if you've ever, like I said, play like Bayonetta or Nier, that sort of thing, I think you'll love this. And from what I've heard, it seems to have very good reviews so far. Like I know that people who get the copies early, like journalists and stuff, they were reviewing it and they were actually giving it pretty high scores. I know it was like in the high 80s, I want to say, like anywhere from like mid to like high 80s, I think, out of 100. So that's really good. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm just really excited. Hopefully by next week, I've gotten my game, put plenty of time into it. That way I can talk about it. So there you go. Alrighty, guys. And with that being said, that basically does it for my week. But that out of the way, though, I think we should transfer over to the news. And it's kind of funny because this first news story, it kind of ties into something that I just talked about last week. Basically, it's funny because I've just been talking about Yakuza. I've been saying about how I really enjoy the series, and I've kind of been saying, if anyone's interested in what I've talked about, you should like dive in or whatever. And just as I'm talking about Yakuza and I'm like singing its praises, it's funny how we get this news story. As the title of the article states, Yakuza 7 announced for PS4. First trailer, details, and screenshots. So, Yakuza 7 got announced. It's been revealed that in the West, it's going to be called Yakuza Like a Dragon, which that's actually kind of cool because, it's always had that in Japan, I think. But in the West, it's always been Yakuza and some sort of a number. So I think it's kind of cool that they're dropping the number and they are giving it, like this name or whatever. And the reason that they're doing that, though, that's what makes it really interesting. It's because this title, like from here going forward, it looks like they're totally shaking up the Yakuza series. First of all, if you guys looked at last week's thumbnail, last week I had the Yakuza, protagonist up to now. I had him on the thumbnail, and yeah, his name is, Kazuma Kiryu, I think, something like that. And he's been the protagonist of every game up to now. Like, even if, there have been, like, other protagonists, like, secondary protagonists or whatever, he's always been, like, the poster boy. He's been, like, the main character. And apparently, starting with Yakuza 7, they're switching over to the guy that I have on this week's thumbnail, that his name is, I'm just looking for his name, so I'm trying to see if I can say it right, Ichiban Kazuga. And Ichiran Kazuga, honestly, I think he's really cool. I think I heard he was like the protagonist of like this like spin-off mobile game or something, or like some online browser game or whatever. But yeah, it's really cool because we're getting a totally new protagonist that I really like his look, honestly. Because up to now, you know, it's always been the same protagonist that he's, you know, I don't know, his hair is very normal and very subdued. He's always clean shaven, that sort of thing. He's always like very stoic looking and like, you know, he looks very serious. And this protagonist, just looking at the picture of him, he's this dude that got like a fro going on. He has like some facial hair, which, I mean, you never really see in like Japanese titles. I think that's really cool. And yeah, just looking at like all like the promotional art for him, he just looks like very smug and kind of cocky. And so I just think that's kind of cool, you know? Like, not only is it very different, like I said, from what we usually get from Japanese titles, but I think it's so different from Kiryu that I think that works, you know? I think totally shaking it up, I think that's really cool. And besides that, another thing that's really interesting is that up to now, all of the Yakuza games have been like these big sandbox looking things where you're running around and you're, you know, interacting with like people and locations and all sorts of stuff. And when you fight, it's very much like, I guess you can say like a beat 'em up, you know, like you're running around, you're just like fighting and you beat people up and you move on, that sort of thing, like very open. Here though, they've announced that they're switching to a live command RPG style. So instead of it being like, you know, where you run around and you're pressing buttons and doing combos and stuff, here it's going to be like an RPG sort of thing where Ichiban and his crew, you know, they'll run into an enemy and then they'll fight basically, you know, RPG style where you like select commands and stuff. So that's very different. Personally, you know, I think all of this sounds interesting. I think the fact that they're deciding to shake things up, I see it as a good thing, you know, because I do think when a series keeps things the same all the time, I do think things can grow kind of stale. But at the same time, I know a lot of fans are complaining and, you know, I can see why, because it is weird that instead of trying this out, you know, in some sort of a spin-off first, and then maybe integrating it into the main story, like it is weird that they just decided like, hey, for our next, you know, numbered title, let's just change everything. That is kind of weird. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. Hopefully it's a good game. If what I haven't said before sounded interesting to you, maybe what I've said now will sound interesting to you because it's so different. But either way, you know, I think it's a really good series. I think they put a lot of like work and effort into it. So hopefully you check it out, you know? So there you go. All right, moving on. And speaking of another new game, earlier this week, Yacht Club announced that they are teaming up with a team called Nitrome. I want to say that's how you say the name of like the little studio or whatever. And they're working on a game called Shovel Knight Dig. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Yacht Club Games, they're the ones who made Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is this, like, really successful game about, like, this little knight guy that fights with the shovel. It's done, like, in an 8-bit sort of style where you're running around platforming and fighting enemies and stuff. And, yeah, Shovel Knight's been really successful. He's basically appeared in, like, every indie game you can think of. You know, he's made lots of appearances all over the place. And, basically, you know, all Yacht Club has worked on up to now has been expanding the original Shovel Knight like more and more, like where they were adding like DLC or they were adding tweaks and stuff here and there. You know, it was all about just that original Shovel Knight. But as the article says, apparently Yacht Club Games is teaming up with Nitrome and they're making Shovel Knight Dig, which, as it says here, is a brand new entry in the Shovel Knight series. So I think it's pretty cool. If it's not broken, why fix it, you know? Like, this character has worked really well for them. So although it does sound kind of weird that they haven't made anything else, I do think it's kind of cool that they're choosing to do more things with the character, you know? Like, if I read the key features right here, it says, you know, an all-new presentation featuring a new Shovel Knight story. Next key point, the first Shovel Knight adventure in glorious high-color pixel graphics and sound. And then it says right here, Shovel Knight Dig levels have been meticulously crafted and stitched together using proprietary generation techniques for infinite replayability. So there you go, you know, if you're a fan of Shovel Knight, then I mean, hopefully you enjoy this. You know, hopefully you enjoy the fact they're shaking it up a little bit. And even if you haven't enjoyed like the original Shovel Knight, because you're not really much into platformers, then hey, maybe this will also grab your attention. Because if you're into like roguelites and like that sort of thing, then maybe this speaks to you, you know, instead. So there you go. But I'm trying to see if there's any sort of release date. I don't think they have a release date quite yet. But yeah, it seems like that's basically it. No release date quite yet. But yeah, if you're into Shovel Knight, or like I said, you're into roguelites or that sort of genre, then look forward to it, I guess. Finally, my last piece of video game news is that if you've noticed, over the past few weeks, you know, I've been talking about a few games that are kind of getting like their second chance on current gen systems. And this news story kind of has to do with that, because the latest games from the past that they're pulling, you know, forward to like current gen are the Disney classic games. So, as the title of the article states, Disney Classic Games Aladdin and the Lion King announced for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So yeah, really old school games, but from what I have read and from what I've seen like in a few like screenshots or whatever, it seems like they're basically gonna give them, you know, updated graphics, give you the choice to switch between like whatever version you want. I think it says that there is gonna be like a few like cheat codes, that sort of thing they're gonna add, and they are gonna add like some extra content, like an art gallery, music player, interviews, you know, behind the scenes sort of thing. But yeah, there you go. If you've played these games in the past, and if you have any love for them, then yeah, I mean, that's good news, right? You can actually play them on current gen systems. I'm looking really quick to see if there's any sort of release date. It will launch on October 29th for approximately $29.99 USD. So there you go, you know? I'm excited. I might check it out. Not too sure yet, but if you have love for the games, there you go. Switching over to mostly movie news with a little bit of, I guess, like also TV news. I mean, they kind of blend together. There was an event this last, I want to say it was like weekend, right? Called D23. And basically D23 is like this big expo where Disney shows off a lot of stuff of like their properties coming up. You know, they talk about movies, TV shows. Sometimes in the past, they've talked about video games, you know. I think it was like last year, they did talk about, you know, Kingdom Hearts a little bit, but, you know, no video game stuff this year. But yeah, they talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Basically it's so much that I'm not going to go too in depth into like each story. I'm just going to kind of like mention each thing. And, you know, if you're interested, you can read about it on your own. Cause like I said, there's just like so much stuff they talked about, but, basically starting from the bottom of the list and working my way up. First off, it says Ewan McGregor is back as Obi-Wan Kenobi in a Disney Plus Star Wars series. So that's pretty cool. You know, they're definitely pushing for Star Wars content on Disney Plus. I know they're making that show The Mandalorian. I know that they're bringing, I think it's like season 7 of some sort of like a Star Wars animated thing to the streaming service. And now, you know, apparently they're going to do a Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I thought Ewan McGregor, out of that prequel trilogy, I do think he was like the most interesting part. So the fact that they're bringing him back and he's doing this TV series, I don't know, you know, hopefully it's good. So yeah. Moving on, it says Avengers Endgame will stream on Disney Plus beginning in December. Self-explanatory, just they're going to put it on their own system. These next 3, I do think they're kind of interesting because it's definitely characters that people have been kind of asking for. So seeing that they're getting any sort of love is, you know, kind of interesting. Miss Marvel will get a live action TV series on Disney Plus. For anyone who doesn't know, Miss Marvel, basically, her real name is Kamala Khan. She's this like teenage girl that I wouldn't really necessarily say takes the mantle from Captain Marvel, because her powers are different. You know, her powers are more kind of like Mr. Fantastic, where, you know, she can like move and like control her body in crazy ways. But yeah, I mean, she takes up like the Marvel name, and I think it's cool. From what I've seen, Kamala Khan is a pretty fun character. She's really like bright-eyed and really like enthusiastic about being a hero, that sort of thing. So I think that's nice, you know, that she's getting her own TV series. It also says that a She-Hulk series is coming to Disney Plus. It doesn't necessarily say at least not here, if it is animated or live action. You know, I do find it weird that it doesn't say live action the way the Miss Marvel one does, but whatever, you know, whether it's animated or not. She-Hulk is an art character that I think is pretty cool. She's the cousin of Bruce Banner, you know, aka the Hulk. I think she gets like a blood transfusion, which makes her into like a Hulk type person too. The difference is that she doesn't totally like roid out and like become angry or whatever. But yeah, she's supposed to be like this sexy lawyer lady that's like a really witty, breaks the fourth wall sort of character. She's a lawyer, that sort of thing. So from what I've seen, she seems really fun. She seems really cool. So that's cool. Finally, out of the new TV series that they talked about, apparently a character called Moon Knight is going to get a TV series. From what I've seen, what makes him interesting is that he's this superhero. It's really ambiguous if he's insane, and so he just thinks he has powers, or if he actually really like does have powers because, you know, he's possessed by this moon deity or whatever. But from what I've seen, he seems pretty interesting. His stories seem like they kind of go in like that Punisher sort of direction where he's not afraid to get violent. He's not afraid to like, you know, play by his own rules or whatever. So I don't know. Hopefully it's good. So there you go. Moving on. There was a live action Lady and the Tramp trailer. I don't know. Once again, I don't know what's Disney's fascination with live action. I just thought it looked very meh, but there you go. I guess they're making a live action Lady and the Tramp. They showed a trailer for The Mandalorian, which, as I mentioned earlier, that's a little series that they're trying to put on Disney Plus that has to do with, like, you know, bounty hunters in the Star Wars universe. It looks pretty good, honestly. Like, the production value looks really high, so hopefully it's a good show. Let's see. We saw some images from Marvel's WandaVision. They announced that there's going to be a Disney's High School Musical, the series, which I don't know. I just thought that was really weird. They talked a lot about Disney Plus, you know, different TV shows, movies, that sort of thing. They talked about Disney Pixar's Soul, which is supposed to be the one about, I guess, like people's souls and kind of about like finding like your purpose and all that kind of thing. What was special about that one is that it says like right here, it'll be the studio's first black lead. So, I mean, that's cool. You know, it is kind of interesting that they really haven't had any black leads up to now. So, you know, it is kind of cool, and hopefully it's a good movie. They also announced Raya and the Last Dragon. That's supposed to be Disney's next animated film, and that's supposed to arrive in Thanksgiving 2020. New Frozen 2 stuff. They're talking about changing stuff at the Disney theme parks. A lot of it was that. And that's it. You know, I think that's basically it. So overall, you know, a few TV shows, a lot of Disney Plus, you know, information. They're changing a lot of like their theme park stuff. And yeah, we got some looks at some of the animated movies coming up. So I don't know. Like I said, if you want to read more about each of the stories yourself, link is in the description below. And then that link, it has everything listed, and you can click on each of those stories to like read about them more individually. But I don't know. I mean, it sounds like they have some interesting stuff coming up. I'm not really thrilled about all of it. You know, I think some of the stuff sounds kind of but who knows? You know, hopefully as much as possible is fun or is interesting, you know? So there you go. Alrighty, moving on. I have another, I guess you can say, news story that's kind of tied to Disney. This one has to do with Star Wars Episode 9. Basically, if you've seen the trailer that was announced during D23, they showed like a few seconds. It was mostly nothing. It was mostly like a recap, but they did show a few things from the upcoming Star Wars movie. And some of the stuff they showed Rey and Kylo, they showed them engaging in a lightsaber battle. I mean, it looked kind of cool. I think they were on top of like the Death Star. It showed a C-3PO with red eyes, which that was really ominous. I mean, like, is he possessed? Like, what is he up to? You know, like I said, that was interesting. And finally, the last thing they showed, that this is the one that like is really, you know, people are making a really big deal out of it, is that they showed Rey. They showed her in black robes, looking kind of like pale, you know, definitely looking kind of like there's something off about her. And she's holding like this crazy looking like red lightsaber. And then she like activates it, you know, it first looks kind of like a switchblade sort of thing. And she activates it and it becomes like a two-sided red lightsaber. Kind of like Darth Maul's from episode 1. So yeah, that's what this news story is about. Basically, it's about how, people are really wondering if Rey will go to the dark side. And as the title of the article states, Daisy Ridley teases Dark Rey is real in Star Wars 9. So yeah, people are speculating. They're like, okay, why would they give away something so big? It's gotta be like a dream, or a vision or something. But then apparently Daisy Ridley, she's saying that, I think this is her direct quote, she means, the evidence is on screen. Take that evidence as you will. But there's no smoke without fire. To me, it sounds like she's saying people's theories about it being fake or being a dream or whatever, maybe not necessarily, but I don't know, maybe she's just trying to throw people off her track. But yeah, definitely, it's kind of interesting, Star Wars Episode 8 was definitely pretty weak. They definitely, I don't know, they turned a lot of fans away with a lot of their decisions. They really did some things that were kind of awkward, or I don't know, they kind of wrote themselves into a hole, So I know they're trying really hard to bring people back with Episode 9. I'll admit, making Rey turn to the dark side, that would be interesting, if they do it right. But I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see how the movie actually comes out. Because yeah, up to now, we don't really know too much about the movie. We got a little bit of information. And for all we know, it could just be a dream sequence or a vision or something. So will she actually go to the dark side? Who knows? But I don't know. Hopefully that at least kind of hypes people up for the new movie, Speaking of hype, this next news story has to do with the Joker movie coming out in October. And I know that a lot of people got pretty hype, or at least more hype than they already were, when earlier, I don't know if it was this week or the last, it was announced that it will be R-rated. And as the title of the article states, Joker director spent a year convincing Warner Brothers to make it R-rated. So yeah, a lot of superhero movies, they don't really like to go the R-rated route, because it makes sense, because PG-13, basically anybody can watch it. Once you reach that R-rated rating, it does become more difficult because you can't have as much of a wide audience. But yeah, there's movies where it definitely would make sense for them to be R-rated. Venom should have been R-rated. The Dark Knight trilogy, it was always kind of weird because it always felt like it could be a very light R, but instead it managed to be PG-13 somehow, which is really interesting. But that easily could have been an R, and I think they could have made it work. So yeah, the Joker movie will be R-rated. I think that's really cool. I think that the Joker movie, it definitely looks interesting. I like that it's very grounded and more realistic. If it wasn't for the fact that we know the Joker fights Batman, if he wasn't an established character, this could easily look like some drama about some guy that turns to crime and goes insane. It looks very grounded, honestly. So I'm hoping it's a good movie. I think it looks really interesting. I think it looks really different from other stuff that DC has done. While it is very grim and dark, I think it's in a good way, where it looks interesting and kind of psychological, versus DC movies like Man of Steel or Batman vs Superman, where it's dark but in an edgy way, So I don't know. I think that the director, good for him. I'm glad that he convinced the studio to allow him to go forward with his vision or whatever. And yeah, hopefully this movie, if it wants to be R-rated that badly, hopefully it, makes use of it. Hopefully it is a good movie, So I'm excited for the movie. I think it looks interesting. I'm definitely going to check it out. Like I said, I know it comes out sometime early October. So I don't know. Keep an eye out for it. Let's hope it's good. Alrighty, moving on. My second to last news story is kind of a follow-up to something I've talked about in the past. In the past, I talked about how Breaking Bad, apparently it was gonna get a movie, and the movie's supposed to focus on Jesse. And sure enough, I don't remember if we had the name before. I don't think we did, but the movie's gonna be called El Camino. Yeah, it's called El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. It's written and I believe directed by the same guy who, you know, did all of Breaking Bad. It's gonna star Aaron Paul as Jesse Pinkman, and that's basically all we really know right now. If you want like a little bit more information, you can watch the trailer, which does kind of hint at some things, you know. All we really know is that it's gonna star Jesse, and as it says right here, you know, in the last episode, Jesse drove off, you know, after Walter. I'm not really gonna say in case you haven't watched the show, although I don't really know why you would be watching the movie if you haven't watched the show, but regardless, Walter, you know, I'm just gonna say he helps Jesse in a way. Jesse drives off, and so this movie's gonna answer some questions like, you know, what happened to Jesse? What has he been up to? And it's going to come out on Netflix on October 11th. I'm pretty excited for it. I think Breaking Bad was a really good series. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, definitely, it's one of those things where I always wanted to know what happened to Jesse. So I think getting a movie starring the same, you know, actor, written and directed by the same guy, and, you know, where it'll answer some of these questions, I think that's really cool. So I'm really excited for it. So, I don't know how many of you are Breaking Bad fans, like I said. I don't know how many of you have watched the series in the past. I don't know how many of you are planning to watch this movie. But if you're planning to watch it, it's coming out October 11th on Netflix. So, there you go. You know, keep an eye out for it. Look forward to it. Alrighty, and finally, for my last news story, which is an anime news story. It's not really a news story, per se. It's actually a little bit different. But it's this video by a YouTuber, like an anime reviewer, you know, sort of YouTuber, that when I saw it, I thought it was pretty interesting, and that's why I wanted to share it. Basically, the title of the video is What's So Great About Demon Slayer, a Kinder Kind of Shounen. And yeah, it's by a channel called Mother's Basement. But Mother's Basement overall, I do think he's a pretty good, like, anime-focused YouTube channel. Like, I'm not gonna say I agree with everything he says, or I love, like, every single one of his videos, but overall, I do think he's a pretty good, you know, anime YouTuber. He reviews stuff, he talks about stuff coming up each season, he breaks down, like, different fights, or, like, different, opening, credits to different anime. He talks about, like, different anime movies, for instance. Like, I think it was through him that I heard about a Silent Voice, I want to say. And so basically, you know, this whole season, or however long it's been going on, I've been watching Demon Slayer, and, you know, I've been talking about it on the podcast here and there. And so earlier this week, he did a video on Demon Slayer, and he kind of talks about what he likes about it and what he thinks is interesting about it, because you have to watch the video, but he brings up really good points that it is very different from other shonen anime. Like, I do think it's really cool how I feel like for a while we were just getting a lot of shonen anime that was all the same, you know, where it's just all about like power levels and people like answering everything with violence, and, you know, the protagonist always wins because he levels up because of friendship, that sort of thing. But it is interesting to have shonen anime that are a little bit different. You know, like he brings up The Promised Neverland. That is, you know, a shonen anime, and I love it because I think it's cool how it's so different. You know, it's not even really about fighting or anything. It's about like, it's just about like outsmarting your opponents and planning an escape. You know, like that's really cool. And sure enough, Demon Slayer, even though it does have fighting, it is about this guy who's part of this like little, like secret, what would you call him? Like a secret organization, not an organization, like secret army, I guess. I don't really know what you would call them, but he's part of like the Demon Slayer Corps, and they're a bunch of swordsmen that, you know, travel around the country killing demons. Even though there is fighting, you know, where he is, you know, fighting demons one-on-one, and he is using a sword, and he is using like powers and stuff. It is cool how it is different, you know, as Mother's Basement, as he talks about in his video, that even as our protagonist and his friends level up, it's cool that they're not the top of the food chain. Like, even though they do power up, and it is impressive to see them grow as the series progresses, they always make it very clear that there are people much stronger than them. Like, I want to say it was like episode 19. Not only was it like a really good episode, like animation wise and like lore wise, and not only was it a good episode in terms of seeing our protagonist like learn some new moves and stuff, but then like a few episodes later, we see these other characters that are like part of his like team or whatever, and they just totally like they're way out of his league. And so seeing that our main characters aren't at the top, like I do think that's really cool. You know, showing that they do have a long way to go and they do have more to strive toward. Like, I think that's really cool. And like another thing that they talk about is that it's really cool, as it says, a kinder kind of shonen. It is really cool how our main character, like one of his biggest attributes is his compassion. Like, even though he's fighting these demons that have done horrible things and, you know, they've killed people or whatever, he has this ability to look at the human side of them. Because, you know, as you watch the show, you do see that a lot of these demons, you know, they used to be people that were kind of cursed into turning into demons. You know, I mean, that doesn't make them totally sympathetic because they do horrible things. But, you know, you do kind of understand what drove them to becoming monsters. And sure enough, you know, when he kills the demons, he kind of takes the time out to, you know, either like pray / like bless them so that they can move on. Or, you know, as he kills them, you know, he doesn't just like torture them to death or anything. Like, he does try to make it like as quick and painless as possible. And so I think that's another like interesting aspect of this anime. That, you know, we have a main character who's so compassionate and he's like not afraid to like think of these things he's fighting as humans, you know? So I would say watch the video, you know. I think, you know, Mother's Basement, I think he explains it way better than I can. But like I said, you know, I really enjoyed Demon Slayer. I think the story, I think the animation, I think the characters, I think, you know, the way it does things differently. I think all of that makes it a really good series, and I am really enjoying it, you know? And so, yeah, when I ran across this video and saw him talking about it, I thought that it was a really good video. And since I couldn't really find any, like, news stories having to do with anime this week, I thought I would plug this, you know, into, like, the anime news spot, because I think it's a video worth watching that, you know, kind of teaches you a bit about this anime. So, you know, I would say check it out. I think it's a really good video. Likewise, I think that this guy, Mother's Basement, I think he's a pretty good YouTuber, you know, what he does. So if what I said sounds interesting, link is in the description below. Check out his video, maybe check out other stuff on his channel. There you go. Alrighty guys, and with that being said, that brings us to the end of another news week. As usual, hopefully that was something you guys found entertaining, informative, something that stood out to you, you know, for one reason or another. And yeah, with that being said, we have one final section of the podcast, which is the Content Creator Spotlight. So without further ado, let's head over to that. The content creator for this week, like, they are a bit different from other content creators I've talked about. You know, they're not even like a YouTuber or anything, but I do think that they are an interesting, like, person to follow if you're into that sort of thing. I guess what I'm trying to say, my content creator, so to speak, for this week is a Twitter, what do you call him? A Twitter profile, I guess, called Sabi, Sabi at new_wabi Sabi. And basically Sabi, they're this really cool journalist that in their free time, they provide the service of talking about leaks and rumors. And that's why I said, you know, it kind of depends if you're into this sort of thing. I know that there's a lot of people out there that they don't want to be like spoiled on anything. You know, I've seen it that they think rumors and leaks and that sort of thing, they think that they kind of ruin the fun of reveals and stuff. And, you know, if that's how you feel, then I totally respect it. You know, I don't even blame you. I do think it's kind of true. But at the same time, you know, I do think that rumors and speculation and leaks and stuff, I do think they are kind of interesting sometimes, you know? Because I do think that there is kind of a fun aspect of seeing someone say like, oh, you know, I heard this rumor, I heard this leak, you know, about such and such thing happening, and then seeing, you know, whether or not it comes true. Right? So, yeah, that's it for this week. I want to give a shout out to this Twitter profile. Their name, like I said, is Sabi. And Sabi, from what I've seen, they are pretty reliable. A lot of stuff that they talked about for E3, Gamescom, Nintendo, the Nintendo Direct, that sort of thing. A lot of stuff that they've talked about has actually happened. Like, I think they have very credible sources. So that's why, you know, for this week, I say, if you're into that sort of thing, go follow Sabi over on Twitter. You know, they seem pretty reliable. Sabi, pretty sure you're not going to listen to this. I think you're way too busy with like your job, as a journalist, all that sort of stuff. But if you're listening to this, Sabi, I think you're an awesome dude. I know a lot of people probably give you hate because of all like the leaks and rumors, but I don't know, personally I think it's really cool. I think, like I said, it's really fun seeing if the stuff you say comes true, and seeing as how so far a lot of the stuff you've said has come true. Like, I think you're a really credible source, and that's why I follow you on Twitter, and that's why I'm suggesting you to other people, For anyone else, as always, if the content creator I've talked about sounds interesting to you, check them out, show them some love, follow them, like their tweets, retweet them, that sort of thing. But yeah, if you happen to check them out, then as always, tell them that Wannabe Reviewer sent you, So there you go. Alrighty, guys, and with that being said, that brings us to the end of another podcast. That's one more in the bag. To wrap up, my name is the Wannabe Reviewer. As always, I'm the host of the Wannabe Podcast, available on all sorts of platforms, you can go check that out. And I'm available on social media, such as Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I've been promising to do streaming on Twitch for like the longest time. I've never had the time for it. Same thing. Hopefully I do it sometime soon. If I do, I'll make sure to like put some tweet outs or some announcements over on Instagram. So keep an eye out for that. And besides that, guys, I think that pretty much does it. I hope that you guys have a wonderful week. I hope that I can be here next week for episode 45. I have considered maybe having a guest on, so I'll see if that comes to pass. And besides that, my name is a Wannabe Reviewer, and I will see you guys next time.